Welcome to the M3 podcast powered by EPro, where our sole focus is mindset, meals, and movement. My name is Ken Okonek, and I am thrilled to have you join us. Together with my co-hosts, Jen and Nate DeTracy, we're here to guide you through a transformative journey from good to great. With our combined experience and wisdom, we will unpack powerful insights, strategies to elevate your mindset, and help you achieve your goals. Let's dive in and start mastering your mindset today. All right. This one is probably one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I know that you have a similar feeling. And what we're talking about today is ups and downs, and especially around life and business. I know that when we talked on one of the previous episodes, we were kind of talking about injuries, and there's definitely some up and downs with that. But I think for anyone that lives in our space, in the EPro space, in the personal growth, mindset, entrepreneurship space, there's a lot of ups and downs in life and business. And I think just sharing stories and giving relative points of takeaways is always super, super valuable. And so I'm excited to share this one with you. And so where do you want to start? What, you want to share a story, a situation? What's an up or a down that is going to
Why
set
don't
this
we
up
talk
for
a little
people?
bit about, give them a little bit of background in the businesses that we've grown
Mhm.
so that they can kind of pull from that a little bit and kind of, I guess, have a little bit of understanding.
How
Want to
far
start
back we going? I mean, are we talking lawnmower business when I'm like 14 or
there?
like,
No, let's start with Avocare because we both
yeah.
were in that one, and we can go from there.
Yeah, my story is obviously a lot different than yours. And, I think peaks and valleys are definitely a situation, and some peaks are taller and some valleys are deeper, right? And I definitely think that to be the case. But both of us being in a space where, you shared Advocare with me without even knowing who I was,
Hmm.
which is so grateful for, right? I'll take a 7-figure filled business to be able to come out with the relationship that we get to have with you and Jen, for sure. But getting into a business like a 1099 business specifically, I think is a really good example. And I want to say that I love the direct sales industry. I love network marketing. I love everything about it. If someone calls it a pyramid scheme or anything like that, I will debate it to the high heavens that it's not. And I'm excited to get into it with anyone about it because I know John C. Maxwell, grandfather of or father of leadership, talks about the power of network marketing and direct sales. And I 100% agree with him. I have met, even in my life now, through my businesses and networking events and, running a national marketing company, met so many people that are so successful. And direct sales was such an integral part of their life in a season, right?
Yep.
And so I believe in it so much. But for us, it was definitely an up and then a major down, and what the simple straight to was is I got into a place within a very short period of time. I was making more money than I was making at my full-time career in just a very short period, like 6 to 9 months, matching a full-time income. Insane, right? Anyone would love to double their income and only be working a little side job on the side. But then the valley that came along with that is burning your boats, getting so involved in that, but being in a 1099 business that you don't have full control over, the
Hmm.
rug got ripped out from underneath us. And so that was the valley, right? Is in that transition of earning so much, focusing so much on that versus other things, and then getting it all pulled away. And I think a lot of people can take that in different ways, but we obviously took it and we learned a lot from it and it benefited us greatly. What about
Yeah.
you?
I mean, I'll use the same example, but a little bit different perspective. I mean, me and my wife started in 2006, and the company that he's talking about, we were a part of that until 2019. And I think I think it was the last like 5, maybe 6 years we had built a 7-figure income that we were taking in as a 1099. Here's the thing that I love about that culture. Number one is you don't have to pay in order to get massive amounts of experience from other people that are already successful. So many times we go to college and we get all this knowledge, but we don't have the wisdom that comes from it because you're not applying it. And so in that type of business, you're applying as you're learning constantly. What it also helped with me, I was very successful in the bodybuilding industry and had a gym prior to that, but I was successful on the outside. I looked great on the outside, but the inside was still torn up from things, scar tissue from the past. And what it allowed was a lot of people, some of them had no money to be made on me, but a lot of cross line people. That type of business, what it does is it creates a culture. And I think when you talk about a successful business, any successful business, it has to be about relationship and culture first, because money will come and go and it'll have seasons and it'll have ups and downs. What's the glue that holds people together is the relationship and cultures, and then building systems around that. And that's what we learned to do very well in that business, you know. And so it was like he said, it was something that had an abrupt end in 2019. But you know what me and my wife learned from that, you know, I always say there's moments of hardship, but they reveal it's the hardship that reveals really who you are and what you've prepared to become. You know, because there was a lot of people in that business that when things went down, um, they weren't the people that we thought they were. And so that's what I love about something like that. Again, if you're talking about wins and lessons versus wins and losses, we're all going to go through seasons. It doesn't matter if it's somebody's dying or you've gotten sick or you've lost a job, or there's going to be unfair things that happen. It's how you respond to those things. And luckily we had built that specific business had allowed us to build who we were, so that when we walked out of that, we were actually a lot more attractive to the in the next season, that we were actually able to build a bigger business.
Yeah, you know, and you're right, to the culture, right? Because of that transition, the amount of people that just flocked to you guys was insane, right? And which created, you know, again, that whole momentum thing, right? So in a way it was a failure, but it created the next bigger success, right? So again, it's big peak, you know, big valley, but then you can even bounce and gain all the momentum to go even climb a much bigger peak and achieve another bigger peak. Obviously, though, other valleys can come along the way. And so, I mean, what would you say are some factors? Because, like, you know, not to shortcut it, but then, like you said, created a seven-figure business, and it took you how long to create a seven-figure business? How long was that first one?
We started in 2000, the end of 2006. So let's say 2007. I think it was 2012 to 2012 or 13 that we started making seven figures.
So 5-ish years,
Mm-hmm.
right around there.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you guys the second time to build a seven-figure business?
Well, it took us less than a year. And then we doubled what our best month was, or, you know, because we
Yeah.
get paid every month. We
Yep.
doubled the amount that we made going forward on that.
So, okay, two things: 5 years to 1 year, and doubled best month, you know, in that time. So, what would you say are some key factors to building a successful business from your lens of, you know, of business?
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I had to learn in order to duplicate myself was actually two different things. Number one is leadership levels. Everybody comes in at a different level. Like everybody starts at a different level, and some people take off, and some people take a long time. I like to Again, I always like to put labels because I like to understand what I'm dealing with, and then how do I help somebody or how do I help myself get to that next level. And so my wife doesn't actually like that I say this, but I would categorize people as A players, B players, and C players. And essentially an A player was a producer right off the bat. Like they had leadership skills, right? They had some influence, and they could plug in. To be honest, they could probably take anything and they could be successful with it because of their past. B players were kind of in the middle, and what we had to do is we had to make sure we had really great systems so that they could start to build their identity and who they were and get momentum, and start to learn the things that the A players were already naturally doing. And then C players are interesting because C players are actually the heartbeat of your business, because they're the people that bleed whatever your brand is, right? Like if you're selling something, we're all selling something. But if you're selling a product, maybe it's weight loss. It's somebody that had lost massive amounts of weight, and to be honest, they may never want to be a leader, or they may still be dealing with scar tissue that doesn't allow them to have the influence, but they're there forever and they want the culture and they want the community. And so you have those different types of people. My wife likes to call them coaches, players, and then the crowd, which is a great way to look at it as well, right? Like the coach sees the big picture, right? They're drawing up the plays. They're not thinking about one person. The players usually are thinking of like, how do they thrive? Like, you know, how do they in practice get the most out of themselves, and how do they insert themselves into, you know, a system so that they can be their best? And then the crowd, The crowd is the ones that are paying the money. They're showing up. They might have a little influence to get people to the game, but they're not actually playing the game, right? And so it's a good way to look at it. And once you understand who you're dealing with, you talk to them, you speak to them, and you speak into them very differently, right? And so that way, what happens is you're spending the right amount of time with the right amount of people, because one of our CEOs within one of the businesses, he said, you take care of the best and the best take care of the rest. And I actually went through a couple classes with John Maxwell, and the same thing. When he would go into another country, what he would do is he would teach from the top down. He would teach the leaders of the country, and then they would influence the rest of the people. Because if you work from the bottom up, which, building a church at one point, you do that a lot. Like, what happens is you're working with the broken people, which is great. They really want your attention, but they're still of the consumer mindset, not the producer mindset. And there's only so much of you to go around. And so in a successful business, you have to learn about compounding interest. The reason I said this is because the A players are the ones that are going to compound the interest. You can do 1%, right? Or you can do 100%. You could do 1% and have 100 people that are doing that. And then you start to teach them systems, and all of a sudden you start to gain massive momentum. Or you max yourself out at 100%, and eventually you're going to die out.
Yeah. So my Cliff Notes version of that would be is that know yourself and know a way to manage those that you lead, so you can shift the way you lead yourself to them to maximize your investment, which your investment's people, right? And you want to get the best return on your investment. So being able to know and how to invest in that and how you lead will allow you to be able to lead people correctly, right? Because you can't lead a crowd like you lead a coach. And if you try to, you're going to end up losing the coach because you're not going to be able to communicate in the right way, right? Because you do, as a leader, you have to be able to adjust those different perspectives. My perspective on that's such a great, wise leadership perspective. Mine is just more to like the nuts and bolts of it. And I tell this to a lot of people because I made a transition. I went from a fitness industry to a marketing industry. And, on paper, there's not a lot of similarities in that. But there is enough similarities that I've drawn this conclusion that business is business and they're all different, but there's a core foundation that doesn't change. Sales is sales. Every business needs sales. And so what I highly encourage most people to do is it like, Nate said earlier, and I 100% agree, is everyone's selling something. You just maybe aren't aware of it. And if you're not aware of it, that's a major problem. So becoming aware of what that is, if you're selling attention, if you're selling merchandise, if you're selling time, you're selling something, and understanding what that is and getting really good at it. It's a first skill that I highly recommend that will help anyone in the ups and downs and finding success in business. The other thing is operating, which is leading, right? So all businesses that need leadership. And so finding yourself and how you lead yourself first is really important. And then finding the ways that you meet and lead others, which I think it really aligns to what Nate was saying there. And then the last and most final piece is that you understand that the greatest currency in this world is not time, it is people. And knowing that, what you're really doing in the world is interfacing with other people and really encouraging to grow your skills in that. And the reason why that's important is because the more you're able to communicate with people, the better you can achieve greater outcome. And I mean this because I think a lot of people, especially in my world now, I meet a lot of really tech savvy people. Like, their level of knowledge in AI and technology is incredible, right? So let's just use this example. If your knowledge in something is a 10, but you're not good at interfacing with people, maybe you only can have a level of communication of a 3 or a 4. All you get across to people is a 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. But if your level of communication is a 10, and maybe your knowledge is like a 4 or 5, you now are getting across a much higher load of information because your communication level and able to interface with people is received at a much higher level than your knowledge at something. And so I just, and this is again why I have such a passion for direct sales, because in that network marketing world, you have to grow in all of those categories to be able to be successful. which then again, business is business. If you focus and grow yourself in all those categories, I don't care what business you do. I have every bit of confidence that I could start a different business today and not know anything about it, but I know I have those skills, and those skills are transferable across any business.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking back to some of our trips, because in direct sales, you win all these different trips when you're naturally building your business, and it's really fun as a team to go on these different trips. Well, me and Ken and our families took a lot of trips together, and one season we were really working on honing in on our skills on building relationships with strangers very quickly, because
Mhm.
again, the old saying, people they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And so the faster you can understand what somebody actually needs, then you can connect them to a solution, or you can not sell them anything that you have, and you can point them in a different direction, and that actually builds more trust and influence than you try to sell them something, and they'll come back to you. And so what we started doing, it we called it the 4 questions. Like, how quickly could you take a stranger? And it's amazing, you guys. Like, you can ask one question and then you listen to the response. You don't already have another question in your head. You listen to the response, and based off that response you ask another question. Based off that response you ask another question. You do that 4 times, and it is amazing how deep you'll get in understanding that person, where you now can start to point them in different directions. And so it was really special when I was building a church, we were building a direct sales company. I had a lot of nutritional background. I had a lot of um, I dealt with my parents dying and just different things. It was very easy to point people in different directions, just understanding people. And so there was just a season of where people would come to me and they're like, I don't want to sell. I want to be successful, but I don't want to be a salesperson. I'm like, let's just get to know people, and let's start to become passionate about what you're doing in this business and understanding what you have. But let's not sell them. Let's start to share based off of what their needs are. Let's start to share something that's going to help them and point them in the right direction. And sometimes, again, it's very powerful when it's not your direction and you're just being a connector to something else.
It's so important, and it's worth beating a dead horse to really convey this message to anyone that's listening, is that the most important thing in communicating in everything we just talked about, leading sales, is what Nate just said, is listening.
Mm.
Actively listening. I've come to believe that most people in the world listen to respond.
Mhm.
They're waiting to respond. They're waiting to respond. Someone says something and they're like, okay, I don't want to forget saying this. And then they're just repeating that line in their head. And I know this because that was me, right? Like in a conversation, I like had something I wanted to say or a story I wanted to share, and the person was going on and going on. And you don't even know, they're gone off in a complete different direction. And then guess what? You go and you're like, the person took a breath, and then you just start saying and they're like, wait, where'd that come from? And you're like, oh yeah, when you're like 2 minutes ago, you said this, then when that, and they're like, what is this person doing? It is so powerful, and it is something that takes so much effort, to a point of to be riding on an Uber and just asking random questions of an Uber driver, or when you go to a gas station and you get into it, just asking conversations. But guys, it becomes addicting to actually connect with people, right? Not talk with people, connect. And it becomes powerful to the people that are around you. And so, what I encourage people to do as a skill, right? If this is something you're hearing and you want to grow in yourself, listen, actively listen. And then, whatever question or statement that comes after the person completes their sentence, just free will it and let it come out. I know that seems scary, but your communication will grow exponentially, and your connection with people, the way they interface with you will deepen in a way that builds trust, respect, and that will be gain power in future endeavors if you can just learn to listen.
Well, and in this day and age where there's everything's done in
A
the
screen.
palm of your hand on a phone or
Yeah.
on a screen, right? Or even in Zoom, how amazing, like what an opportunity to separate yourself from others. That was one of the things when we first came into that first business of ours. I was, very coming into it very insecure and very low on the totem pole. And when we started making significant money, I was around a lot of people that had made a lot of money for a long time. And the way that I instantly got into the circle was just that, was just by being very intentional to ask them questions. Because what most people were doing is most people were so concerned with trying to impress those people that they would be just constantly trying to tell them the things. And to their credit, those people that were at that very high level, they were very good at asking questions. So they were always listening. So they didn't have a lot of people asking them questions. And so you want to separate yourself, or you want to grow to the top of, something significant, whether it's a business or it's, a church culture or, whatever it may be. Just get really good at that. And you'll all of a sudden you'll find yourself in that inner circle where all of a sudden you have more influence than maybe that you should, based off of the knowledge and wisdom that you have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. Well, let's pivot, instead of talking about things that have led to create to success, I would love to hear kind of, what was your first breakthrough, that you feel like that created the most success for you? Was it the listening? Was there, if you were to boil all that success down in starting a business, as someone is maybe in the process of starting their own business, what's one thing that you have found to be that?
Well, I would say there's personal successes, and then there's successes that take a community. And I think that the old saying, you can go somewhere fast. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a
Bring it
lot
to-
of people.
Mhm.
And what I learned in direct sales that I think was life changing for me is that ability to start to work, to start to think on how do I gather people, and how do I give them direction, and how do we do this together, and how do we make it so it's not a culture of top down. Because when people feel like they're at the bottom of something, they're only willing to work for so long. But when people feel like they're locking arms with you, and that you have a relationship in your community, and you care about people, what I learned in direct sales, and then I guess also the reason I started really going to church was, how do I build relationships? How do I understand what love truly means?
Mm.
Love isn't that mushy thing, and just passion. Love is actually understanding intimate pieces of people, whether that's with their family, and learning the names of their families, or understanding where they came from, or understanding the cultural backgrounds that they've had to deal with, and had to overcome, like all those types of things. And so I think creating personal relationships was the biggest turning point for me, and something different than, again, when I was in bodybuilding, it was all about yourself, and how do you separate yourself, and how do you step on somebody else in order to get above them. In this type of business, it was really like, how do you build yourself up to a level, but how do you bring those other people with you and continue to help them to build?
Yeah. I think my first true business breakthrough that really just helped learn me to excel was stop trying to be someone I wasn't, and I just started being me.
Mhm.
And that's a really scary thing, I think, for a lot of people to do. Like you were talking about, like when you're getting into a room of people, that there's a whole bunch of really like you, it's something consumes you in those types of moments, right? Where you try to be different, or you try to be like, put your best forward. But I think like the authentic self of just in your natural state, and when you really refine that, there's something, I don't know what the best word for it is, intoxicating about that to others, right?
Mhm.
And there's a natural draw that I believe comes to you in many ways. And maybe it's more like, it's a God thing or a worship thing, but like it's like just when you start being you, that I'm even having a hard time to explain it. The mental real estate it takes to not be you is damning to your best self. And when you learn to just be you, it frees up so much emotion, energy, positivity, thoughtfulness, ability to listen and communication that far exceeds any ability to shine in a room. And it's just, I really, really would. I meet people all the time and I get to know them somewhat well. And I'm like, this isn't you, right? I know you know what I'm talking about, Nate.
Mhm.
And I really wish, and I would really encourage more people to let go of that real estate that is not helping you, it's hurting you, and just be yourself.
Yeah, and to put some guardrails on that, I think because you don't want to use it for an excuse, saying, "Well, I'm just being me," right? Like you
Right.
have to, like you said, you have to assess and say, "Is this actually serving where I want to get to?" But what I think is a good rule of thumb is to ask yourself, "Who has what I want? What do they do?" And then you say, "How can I be my authentic self going towards that?"
Hmm.
Right? Because
Love it.
the thing is you don't want to be a copycat, and we actually saw that a lot in our business. We'd see people that would get up and say the exact same thing as somebody else, but it didn't feel authentic to them because they were literally just copying, and they would hit a ceiling because, like he said, it wasn't coming from them. And so you're what you want to do is you want to take the concept of like, who is that person and what do they do in order to get to that, and you say, okay, now how do I insert myself into that and do similar things, but do it in my own voice, do it in my own, my own will, the way that I would do it.
All right, last question. What's probably the biggest thing in business that you've had to overcome?
Well, the biggest thing for me is always been um, just internal insecurities. I mean, I think a lot of times we put on a good front. Even there's people that are making millions of dollars. There's people that are making billions of dollars that are still insecure. And when you really start to dig down, or you start to get to know those people, or they open up to their circle of friends, there's been people that are like, wow, I cannot believe that. But what happens is, again, the more that somebody shares their own personal journey, it starts to unpack your own, and you start to realize, man, this is something that's holding me back because I'm letting this insecurity dictate my path, versus that courage that we were talking about before, setting that fear aside and saying, I'm going to be courageous for a few seconds, and that's going to lead to something. And so, um, for me, the easiest way to do that is always thinking about who can I impact with what I'm about to do, versus it all being about myself.
Yeah, I love that. I think mine is the perspective that I thought of myself, and maybe it's the same thing you're saying, insecurity. The perspective of who I thought I could be or what I could do versus what I actually do and who I have become, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm 36 now. So I can look back and be like, okay, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little different than what I expected of myself. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I think just resting with that, being okay with that, and then stepping into that. And the example that I use, and it's just where everything is around me, is family, right? And so I could choose to take my strengths, if you look at it, and pour them into something else and probably get a lot of success. And self assurance, we said this earlier, that's not ego, I promise. I
Mm-hmm.
could work 50, 60 hours a week. I could start other businesses at the price of my family and time with my kids. And it's finding the acceptance of who you want to be at that core and settling, in a way, settling for what your true joy and what wealth really means to you,
Mm-hmm.
and being okay with that. And I think that in itself is something you have to overcome. At least it was something for me, right? Because I struggled to be present with my family, but then go crush it and work, because I wanted to go crush it and work. But what ended up happening is when I was crushing it at work, all I was thinking about was my family.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was with my family, all I was thinking about was trying to crush it at work. And
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't present in either, and nothing was positive. And so then what I accepted is that I am going to not maybe achieve as much in this one area to achieve more in this other area. And the amount of joy that I got in both surpassed expectation. And so I'm not saying that I'm achieving as much as I would in business for doing less. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that I allowed, I let go of expectations of myself, and I just lived in, again, that thing I said earlier that you agreed with, is just being your authentic self. And it has given me more joy and more enjoyment of passing of time than ever before, because I always found myself wishing for like, oh, I can't wait for this. Okay, I can't wait till I get to this level, or I can't wait till I make this much money, or I can't wait till I live in this house. And I realized every single time away, it was robbing my true joy because I wasn't even enjoying the simple passing of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was something I had to overcome drastically in myself. And it has given me more joy and, in my opinion, more wealth outside of money wealth than I could have ever wished for. And I hope that for many others to come.
Well, I like how you talk about, I mean, really it's being present regardless of where you're at, right? Because if you're at work and you're thinking about your family, and a lot of people do this a lot, especially people that work from home, because there's so much more of that in this day and age. You're you're not fully present when you're working, and then you're also not fully present when you're with your family because you're trying to cross over and you're trying to do two different things at the same time. I think creating boundaries, healthy boundaries, and having conversations. I know we're going down a rabbit trail here, but having conversations with your family saying, hey, this is the time that I need to be very good at this, my business. So I'm going to give myself this boundary of I'm not going to communicate with you guys during this time. This is just for work, and vice versa, can be very, very healthy. Um, and then, we use this saying a lot as we've grown in business: is how you do anything is how you do everything. Like if you can be the same type of person at home as you can at work, not just be a great leader at work, but be a great leader at home. One of the mentors that I have, what gave me so, I mean, he makes a lot of money, but what really, and he's an amazing leader, but what really, like, I guess made my heart melt for this guy was we were at a John Maxwell event. We had a dinner for just the circle that had come there together. And he had brought his son, and his son was in, I think, high school at the time. And this leader was going around the room and he was telling everybody, what he thought about them and like their attributes and that type of thing. And his son stands up and he's like, hey, he's like, could I say something about my dad? And we're all like, sure, sure. He's like, I want you guys to understand that, I know my dad's a great leader, and I know that, you guys are doing very well because he's been leading you, and he's been doing this for a long time, and you see that success. But I want you to understand that he's an amazing father, and he's an amazing leader at home, and an amazing husband, and an amazing dad. And I just want you guys to know that, because I've actually seen others. This is a high schooler talking about this. I've seen others that were really amazing at business, but I see how they treat my friends, their kids, and they're not the same at home. And that just really hit me, and it really like honed in, like, this is something that I can't just put a lot of time and be very, very good there and then substitute that and then, only give the rest of me when I get home. I've got to balance those two things. And to you, to what you were saying, is sometimes you have to do a little bit less at work so that you can do a little bit more at home and be that balance.
Right. But we, there's, okay, don't get me wrong, Jen's a runner, so she runs marathons, but I believe that the truest form to success in life is understanding you can run a faster race if you run and walk and run and walk. And when you're walking, you're walking. And when you're running, you're running. And if you just communicate like that, till you said, with boundaries to the people that's running and walking, and then when you're running and when you're walking, it makes everything better.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it all boils down to communication, honestly, and being outspoken about that. And that sets the right frame for you to be your best self.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I hope that others understand that. I hope more people see that, because if I think that there's anything, and this is the last, I'm not going to go down a wormhole, but if I were going to say, if I were to put a prediction on any indicator of success in life, it's our ability to lead our families and lead our children. And there's nothing that's more passionate to me than anything. Like, don't get me wrong, I love marketing. Don't get me wrong, I love fitness. And don't get me wrong, I love EPro and coaching and changing people's mindsets. But if there's nothing else that I would hope to be known for, is I want to teach people to be great leaders of their homes, of their kids, because I will debate anyone all day long. A great leader makes a great parent, but not always do you see kids being led by great leaders, and there's a difference. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to get any, but like, There's a difference. I'm not attacking parents that aren't leaders. You are a leader. You're just not investing in your leadership to lead your kids. And I want to motivate more to do that because it makes a difference. And given the fact that I'm a parent now, you can't be a true success or fail. I say like 35. She's 2 now. So 33 years from now, we can judge. Is it truly like, does it actually make a difference? Because that's kind of how long that case study is going to go before I can judge it. But from what I've seen from others, like you're talking about those examples and what I've seen in my own life and knowing other people that I associate myself with, if you're a great leader, you raise great kids, period. Awesome. Well, I hope today was quite beneficial, talking about wins and lessons, ups and downs, learning from those things, and really shifting your perspective in a way that probably no matter where you are or what you're doing, you can become more authentic in yourself, become a better listener, become a better communicator, become a better salesperson, become a better leader, and it will benefit you no matter where you are. If you're a low-level employee in a big corporate 500 company, it'll make you better. Jim Rohn said, work better on yourself than your job, and you'll get paid more than you'd ever expect. And I 100% agree. Thank you for tuning in to the M3 podcast powered by EPro. We hope you found today's episode valuable and inspiring. Remember, this journey is all about continuous growth and repetition. Revisit the lessons, take new notes, and apply what you've learned to reach new heights. Stay connected with us on social media for insights and stories that will keep you motivated and on track. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for empowering content. Hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new episodes. If you're on our podcast listener group, make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more people like you. Visit our website at evolutionprofessionals.com to join our newsletter for exclusive updates and resources. Until next time, keep pushing forward and mastering your mindset. See you at the next episode.